Sometimes the best gifts are the ones made with your own hands. But for a beginner woodworker, this can be a little daunting, as there's lots of elaborate and complicated builds on social media. But don't panic, I got a simple and affordable project you can do in an evening with limited tools and very little time. Recently, I was in a situation where I needed to come up with a couple nice but quick gifts. I do some woodworking, and everybody likes a nice handmade whatever, but as per usual, with a little too much procrastinating, yes, you heard me, and a healthy amount of underestimating how much spare time I had to make these elaborate gifts, and now I'm 2 days out and needing my handcrafted gift. Now what? Tell me if this feels similar to a situation you've been in. So, after a bit of thinking, I came up with a couple items I could bang out in an evening, and best of all, even if you don't have a huge skill set or very many tools, you could do this relatively quick and easy too. But how about a nice little coat rack? So, for the first coat rack, I decided to use some scrap live edge box elder maple wood. The thing I like about this version of a coat rack is multiple things. One, who doesn't like a nice piece of live edge? Two, with live edge, there is usually minimal work, or there can be minimal work involved to make it look amazing. Three, for what I was doing, I was able to use up some smaller pieces that are hard to find a use for. And four, finally, my material cost was next to nothing. In my case, I had to eliminate a twist on my boards, first on the jointer before running it through a thickness planer. I then ran it through a thickness sander, but if you don't have that, don't worry, a belt sander or just a sander can easily be used to get rid of any milling marks left behind by the planer. After that, I needed to straighten one edge on both my boards. I did this with a table saw sled rather than a jointer because in this case it was much quicker for the amount of material I had to remove. But being live edge, I needed to get my backboard and top shelf to somewhat line up in length, so rather than use a miter saw and chop them both exactly the same length at 90 degrees, I decided to make it look a little more raw and natural and cut it imperfectly with a bandsaw. And again, if you don't have a bandsaw, a jigsaw would work just well for this in this case. And of course, after that, there's the usual sanding that goes into making a piece look good, but I didn't end up going crazy with this. I only sanded up to 180 grit to remove any visible scratches. The one thing I would point out is that on anything live edge, you do want to sand your edge slightly to get rid of any sharp edges and potentially any slivers that are hiding there. Remember, you're making a gift, not a weapon. Before getting the finish on this, I needed to attach my top shelf. I just used some wood glue and some screws that I pre-drilled to fit a 3/8 maple plug that was then glued and belted flush. Now yes, I could have biscuit jointed or done this with some hidden fastener or a bunch of other things, but remember, a beginner can be doing this. Finally, my last step is to put a finish on this. I used a satin lacquer spray finish. No, I didn't use any stain, as I felt this would diminish the look of this and add extra time, which I didn't have. I have a spray gun and that's something available to me, but if you don't have a spray booth, don't worry. A lacquer spray bomb or polyurethane spray bomb would work just fine on this, or whatever top coat method you choose to use on this would be adequate. Just remember, most things like lacquer, for example, will require more than one coat with a light sand in between coat. And if you're finding any value in this type of content, consider subscribing to my channel and give a like. Thanks. For the second type of coat rack in this video, I'm not going to use live edge for this, but rather some 1x6 fir, and I'm going to burn a crap out of it. I wanted to give it a bit of visual pop, so rather than stain wood to a color of my choosing, I opted to use a Japanese technique called Yakasugi, or also known as Shou Sugi Ban. So if you're pyro and like to play with fire, this will be right up your alley. When you're burning the wood, you'll want to get it to a nice even char. Kinda resembles gator skin. You could do this over an open fire or use a small propane torch like I'm using. However, I would have preferred to use something with a little more gusto, like a tiger torch, to get this burnt in a hurry. After all that burning, that's the level of char I'm with. Decent char. I think, well, if I had my tiger torch, it'd go a lot quicker. But my tiger torch must have grew some legs that day and fucked off, as tools do when you need them. Just do me and yourself a favor and do this somewhere safe where you don't run the risk of burning down your building, and maybe keep a bucket of water and a fire extinguisher handy just in case. And once you're done with the fun part, comes the shitty part, removing the burnt crusty layer of wood. I have a nice sized brush sander that I used in this video, but this can be done with a wire brush by hand or with a drill. You don't need anything too fancy. It would just take a little longer is all. So rather than use one of these or one of these, I got one of these brush sander, and she's 100 grit, and I think she'll work pretty good. What you will notice as you're going along with the brushing is that the softer wood grain will be removed much easier than the harder, darker wood grain, which leaves an interesting texture behind. The more aggressive you get with removing the material with a wire brush, the more aggressive the texture will be. Doing a technique like this works best on softwoods such as pine, spruce, or in my case, fir. The reason for this is it's because the way the grain patterning is in this type of wood. Hardwoods don't typically work as well for this. I'd like to see how extreme we can get the grain going on here. And I thought, well, go back to the old method and go at it a little more. So we're getting even a more dramatic effect with that. So I think it's kind of a effective. I mean, this looks cool. It's just, this looks like one more step, and it's just got more pop. After wire brushing, that's what I'm left with. It's pretty cool. With my shelf, I did a little playing around with what could be some cool options for a finish, but I ended up settling on just a clear lacquer coat as I like the look of this, and it allowed me to get the project done in one evening. So I opted to use some leftover knobs I have at the shop, and when I put them in, I spaced them 8 inches on center, so every second one is 16 inches on center. So it will line up with your common stud spacing every 16 inches. So this one and this one happen to line up on the stud. And on the back side, before this got put in, so I drilled a hole and countersunk it so that the threaded screw that holds the knob in place could be put on before I put this on. And then I tightened the knobs on to the screw. And then for installing it, loosen that off, move my knob out of the way, and I put a screw right there and it's hidden, so I can just turn it back and you never know it's there. All in, each coat rack took me about 3 to 4 hours to complete, so if you needed a quick gift idea that's not overly time consuming and complicated, well, here's my gift to you. Let me know in the comments if you ever made a gift that got left to the last minute. Were you able to finish on time? Did it turn out? If you like this idea, consider subscribing to my channel, and thanks for watching.